Keep your hands off what isn't meant for you. The sting of Pamela Whitaker's palm cracked against James Turner's wrist, echoing through the luxury hotel kitchen like a gunshot. Forks froze mid-air. Conversations died. The only sound was the faint hum of expensive refrigerators drowning in tension. Food and Beverage director Pamela, blonde hair lacquered stiff, pearls choking her throat, ego bigger than the hotel's chandelier, hissed, "Those aren't for the hell. Know your place. Know your place." Heat shot up James's neck. Heat shot up James's burning hotter than the ovens behind him. Burning hotter than the ovens behind him. Neatly dressed executives exchanged uncomfortable pretending to focus on their sparkling water. None dared to intervene. His dignity lay scattered on the marble floor like crumbs from the untouched corporate lunch tray. This was Meridian Hotel Group, the crown jewel of luxury. Its flagship pulsed with elite power brokers. Marble floors gleamed like ice. Power radiated from every gold-trimmed hallway. And here stood James Turner, a 42-year-old black man who'd given 12 years of his life to these walls. Widowed, a culinary school graduate who should have been running his own kitchen, not slaving through double shifts. Life had sucker punched him 3 years ago. Cancer stole his wife. Medical bills drained every dollar, and now his son's med school tuition bled him monthly like clockwork. The kitchen staff loved James. The kitchen staff loved James. They barely tolerated management. Everything shifted the day Pamela sashayed in with her white employees decorative brand of better schedules and surprise white employees suddenly floated into better schedules and surprise promotions. Vanished from official records like ghosts. Praise for high above in the presidential suite vanished from official records Daniel like Hayes flipped through high above in the presidential suite. 60-ish CEO Daniel Hayes custom suits sharper than a blade. Hayes had built Meridian from 3 hotels into an empire of 30. Sharper than a blade. Quarterly inspections were legend. Built Meridian from 3 hotels into an empire of 30. Felt. Quarterly inspections were legend, and yet he saw everything. Who saw, but his presence was like smoke. Noticed Pamela's quiet war below, and yet the man who James's alarm clock screamed hadn't noticed Pamela's quiet war below. In their paper-thin apartment walls, he dressed in silence, every morning, careful not to wake the neighbors. In their paper-thin apartment before leaving, he checked on David, his son, careful not to wake medical textbooks at his desk. Before leaving, he checked on David, James was killing himself to fund. Slumped over medical textbooks. By 5 a.m., James was in the hospital kitchen, slicing, stirring, and plating meals designed for patients who couldn't James was in the hospital kitchen. By 1 p.m., stirring and plating meals designed for patients who couldn't even taste them. Driving across town for his second shift at Meridian, he swapped uniforms in his car, driving across town for his second shift at Meridian, 16-hour days, where he stayed until 10 p.m., all for David's future, 16-hour days, $1,850 every month for tuition, all for David's future, another $575 every month for bleeding from his late wife's another $575. The math never added up from his late wife's but James did what he always did. The math never swallowed his pride, but James put on the apron, always did, and endured. Swallowed his pride until Pamela slapped more than his wrist. She slapped his humanity more than his wrist. She slapped his humanity. Their modest 2-bedroom apartment ate $1,200 a month. Rent, tuition, debts. The math was merciless. The only constant was James Turner's iron resolve to honor the promise whispered to his dying wife. David will become a doctor. At Meridian, James moved like clockwork, precise, disciplined, efficient. He'd been passed over for the executive kitchen manager role 4 times, his glowing reviews gathering dust in HR folders. The latest rejection came 3 months after Pamela's arrival. She had smiled that tight, poisonous smile and said, "We're looking for someone with more polish." The polished candidate she chose? A younger, less experienced white colleague who once confused bechamel with hollandaise. The kitchen was James's stage, doors swinging rhythmically, knives chopping in perfect sync, dishwashers hissing like steam engines. It was noisy, chaotic, alive, but James absorbed it with quiet dignity, never wasting breath on complaint. That night, the Morrison Tech Investors Banquet filled the grand ballroom with Silicon Valley elites in tailored suits, flashing Rolexes like badges. CEO Hayes was there, gliding through the room with the kind of charm that came with billions and a reputation carved in steel. In the kitchen, James orchestrated the 5-course meal like a maestro, 3 days of prep reduced to flawless plates under his watch. When it ended, mountains of untouched food came back. Dinner rolls stacked like bricks, tenderloin carved but uneaten, sides barely touched. James hesitated, then approached Pamela. His tone was respectful, almost apologetic. "Miss Whitaker, there's quite a bit of untouched food tonight. Would it be possible for me to take some home? My son's been studying all week for his boards, and I haven't had time to shop." Pamela's head snapped up from her clipboard, brows arching like daggers. Executives lingered nearby, adjusting coats, sipping their last drinks. Perfect audience. "Our food isn't charity, James," she said, her voice pitched just high enough to travel across the stainless steel counters. "If you can't afford groceries, perhaps you need a better-paying job." The words hit harder than the earlier slap. The kitchen froze, line cooks caught mid-motion, servers suddenly fascinated with the floor. Silence pressed heavy, broken only by the hum of refrigeration. James's pride burned, but his voice remained steady. "I understand. Thank you for clarifying the policy." His eyes held hers, calm but unbroken. What he didn't see was CEO Hayes, pausing in the doorway, listening. The man who saw everything now watched James straighten his shoulders and return to work as though nothing had happened, guiding his team with the same poise he had before the humiliation. That night, James walked out empty-handed. No food, no favor, but with dignity intact. Still, one question trailed him into the night. How long could he endure this? The next day, 1:45 p.m. sharp, James arrived in crisp uniform, knives neatly rolled, ready for another banquet shift. Routine. But when he checked the staff board, his stomach sank. His name, formerly under banquet supervision, had been moved. Kitchen deep clean. He blinked, checked again. No mistake. A demotion dressed as schedule adjustment. Behind him, her perfume struck before her words. Pamela's heels clicked, her designer coffee steaming in one hand, tablet glowing in the other. Her tone was sugar-coated poison. "We need someone with your attention to detail on the cleaning crew today." Translation: "Scrub floors, black man. That's where you belong." James turned slowly, every muscle trained to mask what he felt. "The Wilson wedding is tonight," he said evenly. "I planned the menu personally, consulted with the family 3 times. Pamela's lips curved into a thin smile, eyes colder than the walk-in freezer. "Plans change." She paused, savoring the power. "Stevens will handle the event, unless this is a problem for you." The kitchen seemed to inhale as one. Line cooks chopped more quietly. Servers hovered near the service station, ears tilted. Everyone watched without daring to look. "No problem at all, Miss Whitaker." James's voice was steady, unbroken. "I'll start in the freezers." "Excellent. I knew I could count on you." The dismissal dripped from her tone as she turned away. For the next 8 hours, James scrubbed grease traps, sanitized freezer walls, and scoured equipment usually reserved for new hires or the invisible cleaning crew. Industrial-strength chemicals chewed his skin raw. His knees screamed from hours on tile. But when he finished, the kitchen gleamed, because James Turner's dignity refused to leave streaks. On break, he overheard Stevens, the shiny new banquet supervisor, panic about the Wilson wedding notes, dietary restrictions, allergy concerns, seating charts. All the details James had personally assembled. "Notes for tonight?" Stevens asked desperately. James didn't even look up from his plain meal. "Second drawer, blue folder, all restrictions highlighted in yellow, seating chart attached. And make sure the bride's father gets the shellfish-free option. He won't mention it, but it's severe." Relief washed over Stevens's face. "Thanks, man. Don't know why they switched this, but You just saved me." He hurried off. Upstairs in the executive suite, CEO Hayes wasn't smiling. He summoned the head of security with the precision of a general. "File on James Turner. Full history, performance reviews, commendations, complaints, everything. And pull last night's kitchen footage, specifically his exchange with Whitaker." The chief nodded. 20 minutes, sir." Then hesitated. "Is there a problem?" Hayes' silver eyes flickered. "We'll see." 30 minutes later, Hayes sat at his desk, a thick file spread like evidence. James Turner, culinary degree with honors, 6 letters of commendation from guests naming him personally, a spotless attendance record across 12 years, performance reviews glowing until 8 months ago. Suddenly, vague mediocrity, lax leadership presence. Communication could improve, not aligned with vision, corporate fluff, no substance. Hayes replayed the footage. Once, twice. James's respectful tone, Pamela's sharp humiliation. The staff's uneasy silence, the way James absorbed it all without cracking. Hayes leaned back, jaw tightening. A pattern was forming. Meanwhile, James kept scrubbing, hands raw, lungs stung by bleach, machines roaring around him. The unspoken question stalked him. Would he keep enduring or break? 2 days later, the answer began to take shape. Chaos exploded in the wine cellar during inventory. 3 bottles of Chateau Margaux 1995, valued at $200 each, vanished from their slots. The sommelier went straight to Pamela. She didn't hesitate. She stormed into the kitchen mid-prep, her voice slicing through the air like a whip. "Turner, my office, now!" Knives stopped. Pans hissed unattended. Every head turned. James calmly set down his blade, wiped his hands with deliberate care, and nodded to his assistant to continue the garlic mince. The walk across the kitchen was slow torture, each step under the weight of 100 eyes. Inside Pamela's glass-walled office, a stage designed for humiliation, she didn't offer a chair. She stood stiff behind her desk, accusation radiating. Care to explain the missing wine? James's face was calm stone. "Which wine would that be, Miss Whitaker?" Her laugh was sharp, theatrical. "Don't play dumb. 3 bottles of Chateau Margaux 1995, nearly $4,000 worth." "I don't have access to the wine cellar," James replied evenly. Her eyes narrowed. "You have master keys as assistant manager." James shook his head once. "Those keys don't include the cellar." Pamela's silence was sharper than words. A storm was brewing. James's voice remained steady, every word clipped and factual. "The cellar requires the fingerprint system installed last year. My prints aren't authorized. Someone took those bottles Tuesday night." Pamela folded her arms, smile thin as wire. "You worked late." "I was supervising the Johnson anniversary dinner until 10 p.m. 20 staff can verify it." Her eyes narrowed. "The system shows the cellar opened at 11:20. "I clocked out at 10:15, James replied. "The security log will confirm it. So will the garage camera. I drove out at 10:17. The air in her glass-walled office grew razor-sharp. Outside, staff stole glances, curiosity and suspicion feeding on each other. Pamela's voice sliced through the tension. "We'll see about that. Don't leave town." Dismissed, accused, targeted. James walked back into the kitchen, whispers prickling his skin like nettles. No one met his eyes. That was the strategy. Isolate him, weaken him, make him doubt his own place. "Back to work," he murmured to his team, his tone calm but iron. "The salmon won't prep itself." In the security office upstairs, CEO Hayes leaned forward, watching the exchange on split screens. His jaw flexed as he scrolled through the access logs. Cellar door entry, 11:20 p.m., authorized by Pamela Whitaker's fingerprint. Employee exit at 10:17, James Turner, flawless alibi. "Has Ms. Whitaker been informed of the fingerprint records?" Hayes asked. The chief shook his head. She hasn't requested them, sir. Hayes's silver eyes gleamed. Good. Don't volunteer the information. I want to see how this plays out. That night, James sat alone at his scarred kitchen table after David had gone to bed. He opened his leather-bound notebook, Marie's last gift. Every page was filled with meticulous entries, dates, times, humiliations, stolen promotions, suspicious errors. Tonight, he documented Pamela's accusation with surgical precision. His pen paused. He whispered into the silence, speaking to the woman he still felt beside him. Your patience isn't weakness, it's strategy. Know when to wait and when to act. I'm trying, Marie. I'm trying to find that line. The next morning, the kitchen buzzed like a hive under threat. Conversations cut short when James walked in. Clusters of staff whispered in corners. The sommelier confirmed the missing wine hadn't turned up. Security interviewed employees, everyone but James, the supposed prime suspect. Steam hissed from simmering stockpots. Glass clinked as staff nervously inventoried bottles under Pamela's hawk-eyed supervision. James moved with the same calm precision as always, plating lunch as if scandal wasn't brewing around him. His silence unnerved them more than anger ever could. Would anyone stand for him, or was he condemned to fight alone? Saturday arrived with a storm. The governor's charity gala, Meridian's crown jewel, 300 guests, media everywhere, the kind of night where reputations lived or died. James clocked in at 6 a.m. ready for grunt prep, only to learn the executive chef had collapsed from food poisoning overnight. For a heartbeat, chaos threatened. Then, instinctively, all eyes turned to James. Despite his demotion, despite the cloud of theft, the staff knew the truth. He was their leader. Without hesitation, they fell in behind him. James guided prep with calm authority, the kitchen transforming into a symphony of motion under his baton. He even carved out time for brilliance. An inspiration struck him for dessert. Chocolate, architecture, art. By break, intricate sculptures rose on every station. Edible centerpieces bearing the charity's logo intertwined with the state seal. Each one a masterpiece of patience and precision. The kind of work no accusation could erase. When the ballroom doors swung open for dinner, the guests let out a collective gasp. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, casting halos on towering chocolate sculptures that looked like they belonged in the Louvre. Phones were out instantly, flashes popping like paparazzi. Instagram caught fire before the first appetizer was even served. By the main course, the governor himself broke protocol and slipped into the kitchen. James, sweat still glistening from hours of labor, caught sight of him, only for Pamela to dart in like a hawk intercepting prey. "Governor Williams, what an honor," she purred, blocking the doorway with a too bright smile. "Magnificent presentation," the governor replied warmly. "Your pastry chef is an artist. That chocolate work is museum quality. Haven't seen craftsmanship like that since Paris." Pamela's smile tightened. "Thank you, Governor. I'll extend your compliments to the team." Her eyes flicked everywhere but James, who stood only a few feet away polishing his tools. The night closed with thunderous applause and record-shattering donations. But the glow of success evaporated as the ballroom emptied. Pamela waited until only James remained, bent over his specialized kit. Her heels echoed sharply across the marble. "Who authorized those chocolate sculptures?" she hissed. James didn't look up. "The executive chef, last week before he fell ill. The materials were already on hand." "That wasn't on the menu. I reviewed it personally." "The guests seemed pleased," James said evenly, his broad shoulders unflinching. "That's not the point." She stepped closer, invading his space, her perfume cutting through the lingering sweetness of cocoa. "You're trying to embarrass me, steal my spotlight." "I'm trying to do my job," James replied, voice calm but edged with steel, "to create the best experience for our guests." "Your job is what I say it is," she snapped, jabbing a manicured finger an inch from his chest. "This is insubordination. First the wine, now this." James straightened, towering over her, his eyes dark but steady. "I've documented everything for 3 years. Every racist slight, every denied promotion, every schedule change, dates, times, witnesses." Pamela's laugh was sharp, brittle, almost desperate. "Playing the race card. Predictable. Tiresome." James's voice dropped low, steady as a judge's gavel. "It's not a card. It's my reality." From the cracked door at the back of the ballroom, CEO Hayes stood frozen, watching. Each word from Pamela tightened his jaw. Hours later, James trudged to the dim parking garage, his 10-year-old Honda the last car left. He didn't notice the black Audi ghosting behind him as he pulled out. Hayes followed at a careful distance, headlights low. The Honda rolled through quiet, worn-down streets until James pulled into Oakwood Gardens Apartments, a modest working-class complex. Hayes parked across the street, watching his employee climb 3 flights of cracked stairs to Unit 307. Through the blinds, he glimpsed James's world. Simple furniture, spotless but spare. A file cabinet half open, crammed with labeled folders, meticulous as his desserts. Hayes sat in silence, luxury leather hugging him as the scent of someone's late-night fried chicken drifted across the cool night air. The CEO had just seen brilliance in the ballroom. Now he was staring at the cost of that brilliance, the grind, the exhaustion, the reality. A lone dog barked somewhere in the distance. Hayes gripped the steering wheel, debating his next move. Why was the CEO of a billion-dollar empire tailing one of his own chefs? This wasn't corporate policy. Hell, it was borderline stalking. But protocol had clearly failed, because if blatant discrimination could fester under his leadership, then he had been blind. Tonight, he wanted the truth. He stepped quietly from the black Audi, breath visible in the cool night. Unit 307's corner windows glowed soft gold against the darkness. Voices floated out through a cracked window, warm against the chill. "Dad, you look exhausted," a young man's articulate voice said. "Long shift, governor's gala, big success." James's tone was drained, yet tinged with pride. "You need to eat something. I made pasta." "Not hungry." "How was your study group?" James asked, gently deflecting. Hayes edged closer, unseen, positioning himself where the kitchen scene unfolded in clear view. Inside, James sat across from a young man in his 20s, his son, David. Medical textbooks towered on the table, anatomical charts covered an entire wall. "You should eat," David pressed, sliding a plate across. "You're losing weight. Already ate at work?" "No, you didn't. I can tell." James gave a tired smile. "Can't fool a future doctor, can I?" "Not this one," David smirked. Then, "I got my immunology exam results back." James froze, fork suspended. 94%, David announced. Exhaustion fell away like a mask. Pride flooded James's face, his whole being transforming. "That's my boy. Second in the class? You'll take first next time." He squeezed David's shoulder with a tenderness that made Hayes's chest tighten. But then David's voice shifted, heavy with worry. "Dad, I've been thinking I could take a semester off, work full-time, help with the bills. I see what those double shifts are doing to you." James's expression hardened instantly. "Absolutely not. This discussion is closed. Your education comes first, always. I'll carry the weight. You just keep climbing." His voice left no room for argument. Hayes scanned the apartment with fresh eyes. Modest furniture, everything spotless. Walls lined with discipline, books sorted, counters gleaming. A framed photo of James in chef whites at a culinary competition, medal draped around his neck. National Minority Chef Recognition. First place. Another photo. A woman's smile framed with a dried flower. His wife. Gone too soon, but still watching. Later, when David disappeared into his room, James stayed at the table, pulling out a leather-bound notebook. Hayes leaned closer, heart pounding. James wrote with surgical precision, each word carved onto paper like a chef plating his finest dish. Then James paused, touching a photo beside the notebook. His wife's smile stared back. "I'm trying, Marie," he whispered. His voice cracked the night's silence. "Some days are harder than others." Hayes felt it in his gut. Memory washed over James. A hospital room, monitors beeping, his wife's frail hand gripping his. "Promise me," she whispered. "David will be a doctor, no matter what. I promise. And promise me you'll stand up for yourself when it matters. Don't let them strip your dignity. I promise that too." Now, years later, James sat alone, pulled between two vows: justice versus survival, dignity versus security. Hayes's eyes caught one final detail. On David's desk, hidden among medical tomes, sat law books, civil rights litigation, constitutional law. The son wasn't just studying medicine, he was studying his father's fight. The clock ticked in the silence, James's pen scratching steady, writing down yet another day of quiet battles no one saw. His wife's photograph watched him with that patient, unblinking look, the one that asked for decisions he'd been avoiding. James's face in the frame was a promise, not a question. At 2 a.m., Daniel Hayes returned to Meridian with the crisp arrogance of a man used to late calls and immediate answers. The night manager flinched at his arrival, as if the suit itself had barked. "Sir, we weren't expecting—" Hayes cut him off. "Get me employee files, all kitchen staff performance reviews for the last 5 years, now." In his temporary office, Hayes spread paper like a prosecutor laying out a case. When the documents fell into chronological order, a pattern unfurled. James Turner's reviews glowed for years. Then, 8 months ago, a slow corrosion, praise turned to vague complaints. Recommendations from 3 separate executive chefs for promotion, all declined with euphemisms. Not fully aligned with our vision, needs development, lacks leadership presence. Corporate speak for, "We're going to ignore this one." Hayes's eyes tracked the anomalies. James' A.S. culinary degree from the Institute of Culinary Excellence dwarfed the technical certs of the promoted manager. James's experience outpaced Pamela Whitaker's by years and breadth. Hayes pulled Pamela's hiring packet and a timeline of her decisions. Under scrutiny, what looked like routine scheduling and HR housekeeping read as handiwork. Schedule manipulations, pattern disciplinary notes, complaints filed and quietly closed with no investigation. He remembered something that made his stomach drop. He'd once been a dishwasher at 19, elbow deep in the kind of work most executives only read about in motivational slides. A manager had seen him then. Someone gave him a chance when pedigree mattered less than hustle. He'd built Meridian on that idea. Had he been blind to its rot? He picked up the phone. "This is Hayes. I need the corporate HR director in my office at Meridian by 8 a.m. tomorrow. Legal. Be on standby for a 7 a.m. video conference." He hung up, decision hardening like cooled syrup. By sunrise, Hayes paced his presidential suite, sleep-skinned but furious. 3 screens showed faces from corporate legal, remote, and expectant. He flipped through the overnight evidence. "These patterns are systematic," the lead attorney said carefully. "Potentially actionable." "Do we have proof of intent?" another lawyer asked, the courtroom first caution of counsel already mobilized. Hayes stopped them with a line that sounded more like conviction than legal strategy. "I don't need to prove intent in court to fix my company. I need to stop this now, before we're buried in lawsuits or worse, a reputation that says merit is optional." Legal exchanged glances. The conversation pivoted from damage control to remediation. The team sketched a plan in blunt corporate shorthand. Preserve all footage, preserve access logs, freeze relevant personnel actions, collect witness statements, and engage an independent investigator to avoid the appearance of a whitewash. Recommendations surfaced. Place implicated managers on administrative leave pending investigation, provide protections for potential witnesses, and consider interim assignments to protect employees like James from retaliatory scheduling or demotions. Hayes pushed further. No transfers that shove the problem under a different rug. No quick reassignments that patch optics but not culture. I want solutions, not evasions. His voice left no room for hedging. The legal lead nodded. Suspension pending investigation, immediate evidence preservation, HR to open a formal documented complaint channel and ensure James is informed and offered support. A dry human moment crossed Hayes' face. The old dishwasher remembered the manager who D once believed in him. "We built a company that says merit matters," he murmured, "but let it happen on our watch, and I'll be the one who failed." There was a small, ironic smile. Decades of empire, and the problem boiled down to paperwork and courage. The plan was brutal in its simplicity: investigate thoroughly, act transparently, and protect the employee while the truth came out. Hayes left the meeting not with vindictiveness, but with a weight. He'd either repair what had been allowed to rot on his watch, or he'd be the architect of its collapse. Outside, Meridian hummed on. Guests arriving, chandeliers warming, the illusion of seamless luxury. Inside, paperwork now had teeth. Hayes' reflection in the suite window looked back at him, gray-haired and very human. He had the power to do something that actually mattered. By morning, Daniel Hayes moved like a general. The orders snapped down the chain. The regional HR director in by 10:00. Audit teams embedded without warning. Interviews scheduled before lunch. Nothing scripted, nothing staged. "Miss Whitaker?" HR asked delicately. "How do you want to handle her?" Hayes didn't blink. "Business as usual. I want to see her raw. No masks." At 1:45 p.m., James Turner arrived for his shift. The air already felt charged. Corporate suits, clustered in glass-walled conference rooms, normally reserved for champagne tastings and wedding contracts. Managers whispered like children caught in lies. Pamela Whitaker's voice sliced through the tension sharper than usual. "All department heads, mandatory meeting 4:00 sharp. Bring your metrics." She breezed past James without acknowledgement, but her tight shoulders betrayed strain. In the break room, whispers rode the air. Audit. Hayes himself. Files pulled overnight. James kept moving, chef's coat crisp, knife roll under his arm. His phone buzzed. "David, got my pharmacology results. Call me. Good news." James allowed himself one smile, quick and private. He thumbed back. "Proud of you." When he lifted his head, Pamela was watching from across the kitchen, her eyes narrowing at that fleeting joy. She turned away, jaw stiff. At 4:00, the ballroom was stripped bare, rows of chairs replacing banquet tables. Staff separated instinctively. Executives in polished blazers up front, kitchen and housekeeping workers clustered in the back, arms folded. James slid into a rear seat, silent, eyes keen. Pamela lingered near the podium, posture taut, checking her watch every 30 seconds. At 4:05, the doors opened. Hayes entered, flanked by HR and 2 assistants carrying tablets. Conversation died instantly. Pamela straightened like a puppet on strings, lips curving into her corporate smile. "Thank you for coming," Hayes said. No raised voice, yet the room stilled. "I'm Daniel Hayes. Some of you know me from photographs. But today isn't about appearances. It's about truth." Pamela stepped forward quickly, rehearsed presentation in hand. "Mr. Hayes, I've prepared a report on departmental achievements and metrics for—" "That won't be necessary, Miss Whitaker." Hayes's tone cut clean, final. A muscle jumped in her jaw. The HR director advanced, passing tablets into each row. "This is an anonymous survey. Workplace treatment, promotion opportunities, discrimination you've witnessed or experienced. Your answers are protected by a non-retaliation policy outlined on screen 1. Pamela stalked down the aisle, smile frozen in place. "Remember," she said sweetly, just loud enough, "we're a family. Families handle things internally." James accepted his tablet. The questions didn't pull punches. "Have you witnessed discriminatory scheduling? Have you been denied advancement? Have you been retaliated against?" He answered carefully, truthfully. He felt Pamela's eyes boring into him, tracking the movement of his fingers. The ballroom filled with soft taps of screens. Executives shifted in their suits, their cologne clashing with the faint scent of bleach from housekeeping uniforms and garlic from kitchen prep. Two worlds, one room, finally forced to sit together. 30 minutes later, Hayes returned to the podium. A massive screen dropped behind him, humming to life with charts and graphs. "These are not from today's survey. Those will take time to analyze. These are from our corporate review." The first graph hit the wall like a slap. Promotion rates by demographic. White employees surged up the bars. Minority staff flatlined. Another graph. Disciplinary actions. Minorities disproportionately flagged. Another. Guest commendations that disappeared from the record books. Gasps broke the silence, a ripple of shifting chairs. Hayes's voice remained steady, but his words cut like razors. "This is what our data shows. Patterns that, if left unchecked, destroy not only careers, but the integrity of this company. And today, those patterns end." Pamela's face drained of color, her corporate smile frozen into a mask of porcelain cracking under the weight of statistics. From the back row, James Turner sat still, shoulders square, eyes forward. He had said nothing, but the room knew. The reckoning had begun. Hayes pointed to the towering charts on the screen, his voice steady but cutting like steel. "Our workforce is 62% minority, yet across Meridian, less than 17% hold management roles." A ripple moved through the ballroom, murmurs, exchanged glances, unspoken truths suddenly given numbers. At this very hotel, Hayes advanced the slide. Qualified minority candidates were rejected 4 times more often than their white counterparts, despite equal or superior credentials. Pamela shot forward, her corporate smile cracking. "Sir, if I may—" "Not yet, Ms. Whitaker," Hayes cut in, his tone firm enough to nail her to the spot. The screen bled with more statistics, pay gaps, schedules designed to punish, disciplinary write-ups stacked like weapons against one group of staff. Then a case study appeared. A 12-year veteran with a flawless record, culinary degree, commendations, denied promotions, time and again. James recognized his own life stripped bare of his name. His jaw set, but his face betrayed nothing. "And finally," Hayes said, "we've uncovered 3 years of documented discrimination. Dates, times, witnesses." Pamela's eyes shot to the back of the room, straight to James. Her face tightened. James calmly reached into his bag and laid a notebook across his lap. Staff around him saw the filled pages and gasped softly. Pamela's patience snapped. She stormed toward the podium. "This is absurd. Some of these people are playing victim." James rose, quietly, powerfully, every head turned. "I don't need to play victim when I have facts," he said, his voice deep but even. He opened the notebook. October 15th, told I lacked polish while holding the department's highest performance scores. November 3rd, schedule changed after requesting time off for my son's confirmation. December 12th, accused of theft despite surveillance showing otherwise. He flipped another page, steady. January 7th, written up for suggesting diversity training. February 23rd, customer commendation erased from my record while others were celebrated. James closed the book with finality. Every entry copied, every record sent to my son, who just happens to study employment discrimination law alongside medicine. A silence fell so heavy it pressed against the walls. James's voice cut through it. Excellence doesn't need your permission to exist. I never asked for favors, only fairness. The dam burst. One staffer spoke, then another, then a wave. She cut my hours when I reported harassment. I was disciplined for one mistake, while others got away with worse. My accent was bad for business. Pamela paled. Her composure collapsed, rage naked on her face. This is a conspiracy. Enough, Miss Whitaker, Hayes thundered. The evidence stands. You'll take the word of kitchen staff over a director? She spat. I take facts over titles, Hayes replied coldly. James lifted his chin, eyes sweeping the room. I could have walked away, found another job. Many did. But then nothing changes. I stayed, because someone has to demand accountability. Tears welled in the eyes of staff who had swallowed silence for years. Pamela's final arrow came poisoned with cruelty. She sneered. And how will you support that precious son when you're blacklisted after this stunt? Who will hire you then? The room froze, gasps, anger, disbelief. But James didn't flinch. He simply stared back at her with quiet fire, the kind of dignity no threat could extinguish. James didn't just step into his new role, he reshaped it. Beyond Hayes' sweeping reforms, he built culture from the ground up, mentorship programs for staff chasing promotion, flexible schedules that respected family and education, workshops where dishwashers trained alongside line chefs and managers. The kitchen, once suffocated by fear, pulsed with creativity and pride. Even guests noticed. Comment cards began praising not just the food, but the energy of the team. At 6 p.m., James unlocked his apartment door. Home, on time, for the first time in years. Dad, David called from the kitchen, his voice alive with warmth. You're early. Director's privilege, James grinned, setting down bags of fresh ingredients, this time bought without the weight of exhaustion pressing his shoulders. They cooked together, laughter seasoning the meal more than the herbs. When they sat down to eat, David slid an envelope across the table. What's this? James asked, cautious smile tugging his lips. Open it. Inside, official university letterhead. James's breath caught. Full scholarship. Academic Excellence Award. They only give 5 a year, David said, his smile breaking wide. Full tuition. Stipend too. James's eyes blurred. You did it. David leaned forward. We did it. You sacrificed everything for me. Now you can finally breathe. James swallowed hard, nodding. Already gave notice at the hospital. And I enrolled in the executive chef certification program. Getting back to my roots. David's voice softened, reverent. Mom would be proud of both of us. James glanced at the framed photo on the wall, his wife's gentle smile illuminated by evening light. We did it, Marie. He's going to be okay. After dinner, James noticed an envelope slipped under their door. Handwritten. Inside, Hayes' words. Mr. Turner. I offer my personal apology for a system that failed you and countless others. Your integrity in the face of injustice has transformed our company. Your restraint, when you had every right to seek revenge, speaks volumes about your character. Thank you for making Meridian better. Daniel Hayes. James folded the letter with care, the weight of acknowledgement heavier than gold. The cork from David's celebratory bottle popped, echoing like a victory drum. Father and son embraced, years of survival finally giving way to triumph. For the first time, grief, pride, and joy coexisted peacefully in their small apartment. 6 months later, Business Leadership Quarterly featured Meridian Hotel Group on its cover. Bold headline, Corporate Culture Transformation Drives Record Growth. The article painted the revolution in numbers, 40% increase in minority management. Record high employee satisfaction, revenue up 28% in the cutthroat luxury market. Hayes explained in the interview, unapologetic, "Our greatest untapped resource was the talent we already had, but ignored. Fixing systemic barriers wasn't charity, it unleashed innovation." The article quoted James too, his words now gospel in boardrooms. Systemic change requires more than intentions. It demands uncomfortable honesty, accountability, and action. Growth is often born where discomfort lives. And there it was, his mentorship program, scaled nationwide. Corporate funding, 20 scholarships a year, paid internships, clear career pathways. James's idea, now a blueprint for the entire industry. Even Pamela Whitaker appeared in the case study, humbled, post-training, admitting her blind spots. Her story became a teaching tool, a cautionary tale immortalized in company manuals. For James, though, the true victory wasn't the headlines, the policies, or even the title on his office door. It was the quiet sound of his son studying late at night, without fear of bills, without the shadow of sacrifice. It was knowing his wife's last request had been honored in full. The struggle had given way to legacy, and this time, no one could erase his name. "I didn't recognize how my preconceptions affected my decisions," she admitted. "Facing the evidence was difficult, but necessary for my professional growth. I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn rather than simply being terminated." Meridian's lobby now displayed fresh flowers arranged daily. Kitchen operations ran harmoniously under James's leadership. Management meetings included diverse voices contributing to the company's renewed success and innovation. Culinary Academy Graduation Day. James and Hayes attended together, watching the first cohort of mentorship students receive their certificates. Among them, 3 had already accepted positions at Meridian Properties. "From your perspective," the journalist covering the event asked James, "what's the key lesson in your journey?" James considered carefully before answering. "Dignity preserved through adversity becomes the foundation for meaningful change." 12 words that encapsulated years of struggle and transformation. "The easy path would have been giving up or giving in," James continued. "But lasting change requires documentation, persistence, and strategic action. One voice becomes many when truth speaks to power." Hayes nodded in agreement. "One person standing firm altered the course of an entire company. Imagine what we could accomplish if more organizations listened to voices they've previously ignored." As the ceremony concluded, James supervised staff boxing leftover food, a practice now standard at all Meridian events. Every container labeled for employees to take home, a small but meaningful symbol of the larger transformation. Have you witnessed workplace discrimination? Share your story below, the narrator encouraged viewers. Subscribe for more stories of justice and transformation that remind us change is possible. What policies would you implement to ensure workplace equality? Comment your ideas. Your experiences matter in creating better workplaces for everyone. The final image showed James watching proudly as his son David, now in his final year of medical school, volunteered at a community health clinic. A circle completed, a promise fulfilled, a legacy established. Proud smiles filled the graduation hall. Applause echoed for the achievements recognized. For James Turner, this taste of success proved sweeter than any dessert he had ever created. If this touching story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe to Fate Tales for more powerful Black stories that illuminate the quiet strength found in everyday struggles. Your support helps us continue bringing these life stories to light.